Well, we were going to release a statement at 1 a.m. with all of our thoughts about college football and Ohio State this week, but instead we decided to do a live show here while people are awake. So I'm Doug Maurice. I'm here along with Ari Wasserman and Bill Landis, our Ohio State coverage team, talking all things Big Ten on our weekly show. And I think we might get into some things today that aren't specifically Ohio State related because there's some really interesting stuff going on at one of the other Big Ten schools. But before we get to that, Ohio State does go to Maryland this week. The first road game in Big Ten play for the Buckeyes also will be the first home game for Maryland as a Big Ten school, so I'm sure people will be excited for that. A noon kickoff in Maryland on Saturday. We, of course, will be there. Bill, is there anything that Ohio State should be worried about going into this game? Maryland is 4-1. Coming off a big road win at Indiana, dominated that game, won 37-15. Can Maryland give Ohio State a game?
I think so. If you look at what Maryland's done over the first couple weeks of the season, you're talking about one of the better passing offenses in the country. They're a top 50 passing offense. Not quite as good as Cincinnati, but still pretty formidable. And what we saw last weekend is that Ohio State is still having trouble stopping the pass. So you have to think that there's some worry there when you talk about a receiver like Stephon Diggs, who's the best player Ohio State's going to see till this point in the season. So yeah, there's got to be some concern.
I mean, you brought up the name Ari. You covered that guy in recruiting. You talked to Mr. Diggs at the Big Ten meetings before this season started. How good is this guy? We know Urban Meyer wanted him. What difference could he make in this game?
Yeah, I mean, he'd make a huge difference. This is the original Dontre Wilson that we're talking about here. This is the guy that Urban Meyer came in 2012, and he flipped all these defensive linemen and really got a lot of things going on the recruiting trail, but at the same time wasn't able to seal that playmaker, that guy that was supposed to take Ohio State to the next level, and that guy was Stephon Diggs. He tried really hard, and I think he's doing exactly at Maryland what he wanted at Ohio State, and he's one of the best players in the Big Ten. It's not even a question. 29
catches, 398 yards receiving, averaging about 80 receiving yards a game. That ranks 7th in the Big Ten. It is interesting to think about. We've seen Ohio State's depth at receiver and running back so far, but really, I mean, I think this guy probably is the best skill player on the field. We don't know exactly for sure who's going to be throwing him the ball. C.J. Brown, the Maryland starting quarterback, sprained his wrist last week against Indiana, didn't play in the second half, was having his best game probably before he got hurt, was 10 of 15 for 163 yards in the first half. Then Caleb Rowe came in as the backup quarterback and played just as well. He was 12 of 18 for almost 200 passing yards. Maryland has another guy in Dion Long as a really good receiver, had 10 receptions last week. It's interesting, Bill, we think Ohio State is probably going to get some of this pass defense stuff fixed. They talked about it, but it seems like maybe Maryland's another team that's going to have some guys try to throw the ball to see if Ohio State really does have the pass defense fixed.
Yeah, and the one thing I like, you mentioned C.J. Brown's injury, and Randy Edsall, Maryland's coach, maybe a little gamesmanship this week, isn't saying what C.J. Brown's status is. He said he won't say whether or not Brown will play until Saturday.
Now we do know that the Ohio State guys, when we talked to them yesterday, said there isn't that much difference in the quarterbacks.
Right, yeah, there's not much of a difference between Brown and Rowe. Whoever is in, you're right, is going to try to sling it around because they saw Gunnar Kiel do it last week. Why wouldn't they try to do it? And the thing that stuck out to me from the Cincinnati game is when Ohio State did get beat, a lot of times it was just guys running by their cornerbacks. It wasn't really anything fancy. So if Cincinnati, and no offense to Cincinnati, has guys that can run by Ohio State's defensive backs, who's to say Stephon Diggs won't be able to do that all day?
Now, we're going to get to our picks later in the week, but if people maybe forgot, I picked Cincinnati last week.
Yes.
That turned out to be an incorrect pick. Ari picked Virginia Tech when Virginia Tech did beat Ohio State. Just as we're early in the week evaluating this, is there anything about Maryland that gives you any pause along the lines of when you picked Virginia Tech?
No. I think that there's a lot of, this is their first Big Ten home game. It's going to be a rowdy crowd. They've done well. They're 4-1. I think they're a little bit better than I anticipated that they'd be. But I don't think that they're good enough to beat Ohio State. I was really impressed with what I saw in the Cincinnati win. I thought that Ohio State would win that game, as you just mentioned, but at the same time, I didn't think they would make things look as easy as they did. Some of that was Cincinnati's defense, but some of that was Ohio State's offense really turning the corner and doing things we weren't sure they were capable of doing. So I think Maryland's a better team than I anticipated too, but I like the direction that Ohio State's going in, and I don't think they really have much of an issue in Maryland.